Morning, everybody. It's 7 o'clock here in the United Kingdom. You are very welcome to spend your breakfast with us here at Sky News this morning. Will the supply crisis turn into the Grinch that stole Christmas? The latest twist in the story, a backlog of containers at a UK port with vessels being diverted. Plus a big day for some of the pricklier post-Brexit agreements. Plenty to ask the Conservative Party co-chair Oliver Dowden and the Shadow Business Secretary Ed Miliband on today's programme. Also this morning, as last night's England game is overshadowed by a violent clash between Hungary fans and police, we will be speaking to the former England goalkeeper David Seaman about the hopes for the World Cup. That is at 8:30. And
you're going to need a bigger boat.
yeah. Remember sinking your teeth into this all those years ago? We'll speak to the playwright who's come up with a spin-off for the West End. That's at 9:45. It's Wednesday, the 13th of October. Blaming a backlog, a threat of delays to Christmas deliveries as a major global shipping company says it's having to reroute container ships from Felixstowe. Is the sausage war solved? Will the EU reduce checks on goods following tensions over the Irish Sea border?
Adapt or die, the Environment Agency says that places like this could be underwater unless more is done to stop climate change.
As more crises begin to unfold, how young people in Britain are bearing the brunt of rising living costs.
I definitely am a bit worried. I mean, if we can't just feel free to, live a normal life and then you're worried every second about how much you'd have to pay, it's not very nice, is it?
And the final frontier, Star Trek actor William Shatner is set to become the oldest person ever to travel into space today. We report from Texas. And fresh evacuations in La Palma as the erupting volcano shows no signs of simmering. Morning, everybody. Another supply crisis blow this morning with a warning of a threat to Christmas deliveries because of a backlog of shipping containers at the port of Felixstowe. Maersk says it's having to divert ships to unload elsewhere because of it. We're going to be joined by the Conservative Party co-chair shortly. First, let's take you through the key developments as we understand them so far this morning, should we? Felixstowe handles 36%, we're told, of UK freight, and those are particularly container traffic. Shipping company Maersk is diverting cargo to other ports in Europe. Maersk says that ships are waiting at Felixstowe between 4 and 7 days. The Maersk boss, Lars Michael Jensen, tells the FT this morning that retailers may need to prioritise what they ship over the Christmas period. Lots to talk about then with the Conservative Party co-chair. Joins us now, Mr Dowden. How's the new job going?
Very well, thank you, Kelly. I'm delighted to be on here with you.
You had time to have a holiday?
No, certainly not since I was appointed chair of the Conservative Party.
Talk about delays at Felixstowe. Apparently, a third of UK freight comes through Felixstowe. What's the problem?
Well, first of all, it is worth noting, I believe, that Felixstowe port authorities have said this morning that the situation is improving, which is welcome news. There is, though, clearly a challenging problem, particularly with HGV drivers. And not just here, it's across Europe, Poland, US, even China has this challenge. That's why we've been taking steps to address it, whether it is, for example, with more training, 5,000 more places for training HGV drivers, making the process more flexible. We're working through these challenges to address them. And I know that it's a difficult and worrying time for your viewers, and they'll be concerned by these reports, but I want to assure them and assure you that the government is very much seized of these challenges and is getting on with the job of addressing them.
That 5,000 European drivers, how's that going?
Well, so there's two separate elements. So there's 5,000 more training, so getting more people trained within the UK, more places for them training, and then there's the further 5,000 visas up in the run-up to Christmas that we've made available. I don't have the latest numbers to hand for it.
I do. 27.
Well, we may have more updated numbers than that now.
It's not going to be in the hundreds, though, is it?
Well, it is one part of a range of measures that we are taking. So that is not the only sort of thing upon which we're leaning.
Disappointing, though.
Well, I'm sure we will get more numbers as time goes on, but that's why we're not just relying, and it's really important that we don't just rely on importing labour, as we have done in the past. We also need to make sure we train up people here in the UK. That's why we're putting the extra resources into training people up in the UK. That's why we're making the process better and more streamlined. So there's a range of measures, and it's all about this wider point, which is that we need to get the skills here, have those higher paid jobs. And actually, the latest news just yesterday about increases in wages is a real example of how that strategy is working.
But the short-term impact is that toys are being turned away for Christmas.
Well, the situation is improving. I'm confident that people will be able to get their toys for Christmas. As I say, I quite understand why people are concerned by these headlines, but we are working through these challenges as we have worked through other challenges.
So should people buy now for Christmas, just to be on the safe side?
I think it's sensible to buy when you want. Some people buy very early for Christmas. My wife is quite an early Christmas buyer.
Me too, actually, to be fair.
Others buy later. I would say just buy as you do normally.
So for all the kids watching, obviously Father Christmas will be fine and he'll have everything.
Yes,
ready.
I have children myself, and they can be.
There you go. Dad's reassuring you this morning, kids. All's going to be well. The EU instead. Let's talk about that. The Northern Ireland Protocol. Lots of EU concessions. We're going to hear more about that, but it's been heavily leaked in the papers today. I'm sure you're well aware. Are the concessions that they're coming up with enough?
Well, clearly we'll wait to receive the full announcement from the EU, and I know that Lord Frost, as he said yesterday, and the government as a whole will engage fully constructively with these proposals. It is, though, important that there is fundamental change to the Northern Ireland Protocol, so we'll be looking to see that. But let's see exactly what the EU comes up with.
Well, apparently they are going to offer, we're told, to remove a majority of the post-Brexit checks on British goods. Up to 50% of customs checks on goods will be lifted. More than half of the checks on meat and plants entering Northern Ireland would be abandoned under the new concessions. Would that be enough?
Well, those are welcome steps, and we will look at them and engage properly with them. But we do need to have a proper discussion about this, because I think there are wider questions, particularly in relation to the competence of the European Court, what used to be the ECJ, the CJEU. It is a rather anomalous position whereby this treaty almost uniquely is governed by the courts of one party to it.
Well, we knew that already.
Yes, we knew that.
And we didn't highlight it until recently.
Well, we knew that originally, but I think two things have changed since then. First of all, that was agreed without knowing what the wider trade relationship would be with the EU. Now we have got a comprehensive trade arrangement with them. And secondly, it is clear that in Northern Ireland, and particularly in one community in Northern Ireland, the Northern Ireland Protocol is not working, and one of the challenges of that is the fact that the treaty is governed by the courts of one of the signatories. So I think we do also need to engage on that more fundamental issue.
What do we want that to look like? Who do you want to oversee this?
Well, there's plenty, and again, I don't want to preempt those discussions, but there are many international treaties that have independent courts and arbitrations mechanisms for them that don't belong to one party or the other. And I think it's appropriate that we should engage with the EU to see how we can resolve that. Because in the end, I think the UK and the EU, we surely are united in the same position, which is that we want to maintain a stability in Northern Ireland. We want to ensure the continuity of the Belfast Agreement and all the other progress that we've made. And there is a problem with this protocol at the moment.
So is it a deal breaker if the European Court still has oversight?
Well, it is a major issue for us, and we want to engage with them. I'm not going to start preempting, writing red lines here and there, but I think what Lord Frost said yesterday, this was a major issue, and we do expect.
I mean, they've made a lot of concessions
there.
It would appear. I'm sure that my viewers would think the same, but now you're saying it can't be overseen by the European Court. So it does sound as though it's a red line.
Well, I very much welcome what the EU have said, and we will engage very constructively. We'll go through it in detail, I don't know every element of what the EU are proposing. We've seen some of these reports. We also made clear, and Lord Frost made clear yesterday, consistent with the command paper we issued in July, that we also have a challenge with the way in which this treaty is governed, the court that has jurisdiction over it. So we would expect to engage with the EU on that point as well.
Some say that you are negotiating, the UK is negotiating in bad faith.
No, quite the contrary. Indeed, it has always been the case that treaties and agreements are up for further discussion and further agreement on them. If you take, for example, the juxtaposed controls in relation to France, our treaty with France on border controls, those have been revised over time, and indeed I believe the French are seeking again to change those. This is perfectly normal that we should seek to adapt. And in the end, what we want to do is we want to make sure that we have something that is enduring, that works for Northern Ireland. And I think that's a goal that surely both us and the EU should share.
Oh, I'm glad you brought up the French. I hadn't thought about that. Speaking to one of your colleagues last week about when we're going to give them the money we owe them. Any clearer on that?
Well, we expect the French to do their part of the bargain, which means
Are they not?
Well, the Home Secretary has raised concerns about that, and I'm sure that the Home Secretary will be making sure that that is done if the French keep up their side.
So it's not us reneging on another deal, is it?
No, it's not us reneging on a deal at all. It's making sure that we deliver on what was agreed originally.
So we don't feel we're getting value for money at the moment, so we're not paying them?
Well, the Home Secretary has raised concerns about this with her French opposite numbers, and we very much hope and would expect that we would make payments as agreed, but the French need to keep up their side of the agreement
So
as
your
well.
colleague said to me the other day that the payment would be going through within a matter of weeks. That's not necessarily the case.
Well, we would very much hope and expect that would be the case, but in return we'd expect the French to keep up their side of the agreement.
OK, talk to me about this damning report that came out yesterday about the government's handling of the pandemic. Just to check, first of all, you have read it, have you?
Yes, of course, I've seen it.
You say, of course, because, of course, yesterday the Minister hadn't read it. Are you happy to offer an apology to all of the families who lost loved ones?
Well, the Prime Minister apologised earlier this year for all the hurt and distress that all those families have suffered, and I share that, and of course I offer that as well. It's been a terrible time for every family affected by this terrible virus. And by the way, I welcome this report as well. I think it's a very good report by Greg Clark and by Jeremy Hunt. And of course, the government will, as we do with all these reports, be fully analysing it and giving a full response to the report and all the recommendations in it.
Still looking for the word sorry?
Well, the Prime Minister has said sorry, and
Are you sorry?
yes, of course I'm sorry, as the Prime Minister is sorry. I was just listening to the sort of experiences yesterday of those bereaved families and that kind of terrible loss that they've suffered, and so many people have suffered, not just in this country but around the world from the COVID crisis. Of course, we're sorry for the.
What are you sorry about?
We're sorry for the losses that that all those families have suffered, but also, of course, we accept that, and I think your viewers would appreciate this as well, that during this COVID crisis, this was an unprecedented crisis. It's a once in 100 years event. There isn't some perfect rule book that we could follow. We are having to adapt and move very quickly. And of course, we would do some things differently with hindsight. But also, as the report rightly says, with things like the vaccine programme, we made huge progress and at real pace with it.
And Mr. Chair, I'm absolutely confident that my viewers, and you had a lot of support at the time. It was a once in 100 years global pandemic. But do you appreciate that when ministers sit there, not you, but your colleague yesterday, Steve Barclay, sat there and 11 times he refused to apologise? That means that, for my viewers, that says politicians are out of touch with the rest of society. Well,
I've said several times, I'm happy to say again that I completely appreciate and understand the hurt and the pain that families up and down this country have suffered as a result of COVID. It has been a terrible disease, and we're still not fully through it.
Yeah, but I went on to develop the point, which was when ministers sit there and won't apologise, can you understand that viewers feel that they're not in touch with their everyday concerns?
Well, I understand that your viewers want ministers like me, government ministers, to appreciate the scale of what's happened and the hurt that they feel, and we do, and the Prime Minister has acknowledged that and has said sorry for all the suffering that people have.
And when your colleagues refused to apologise 11 times?
Well, Steve said what Steve said yesterday, and I'm afraid I didn't read the full transcript of everything that was said in that particular interview. But the Prime Minister has been clear on that.
He should have said sorry then.
Well, the Prime Minister has said sorry. I'm not going to start giving running commentary on different interviews that I didn't watch. I don't know the full context.
You don't watch the show?
Sadly, I watch you.
Well, thank you for joining us.
Hey, I watch you many times, but sadly, yesterday morning I wasn't able to tune in.
OK, well, you can always watch it back on YouTube. What about your successor, Nadine Dorries, saying the BBC is not impartial?
Well, I think this is one of the big challenges for the BBC, and it's one of the things I talked about a lot as Culture Secretary with the BBC, and I very much share Nadine's sentiments that I love the BBC, I genuinely do, and I think the BBC should, though, be a proper national institution and reflect all parts of the country and all different perspectives, and therefore, in order to do that, they have to be impartial. They have to reflect not just the views in London and Bristol and Brighton, but also the views in Dudley and Lee and Wolverhampton or the north of Scotland. That is the role of the BBC, to be a genuine national broadcaster.
I think they know that. Do you think they don't fulfil that?
I think they have acknowledged, and if you look at what Tim Davie has said previously, he's acknowledged there is a challenge about making sure the BBC represents all parts of the United Kingdom, all different perspectives. And I think they acknowledge that there's further to go, and I would hope they continue to do so.
And what about when they interview your boss? Do you think they're impartial then?
I think the BBC needs to strive for impartiality in all of its
Did you see that
interviews. I think there were 2 interviews in question, weren't there?
Talking particularly about the Andrew Marr interview.
I saw some of both the Marr interview and listened to some of the Nick Robinson interviews. You might appreciate, as chairman of the Conservative Party, I was quite busy during conference. I thought it was the way that the Prime Minister was told to stop talking. But again,
it can go on and on and on. It has to be said.
Right, well, I'm not going to get into the details of each interview, but I think as an overall point of principle, it is really important that the BBC upholds impartiality, and there are challenges with
that. Now, I do need to let you go in just a second, but I just want to talk to you about this report from the Environment Agency. Climate change will cause more floods and droughts, rising sea levels and a greater demand for water supplies. That, according to the Environment Agency. Are we doing enough to try to stop it?
We are, but there's lots more to do, and this is why the COP summit, the Climate Change Summit in November, is so essential, because it can't just be the UK alone. If we stopped all our emissions tomorrow, it wouldn't solve climate change. That's why we have to get that international agreement, and the Prime Minister and Alok Sharma, who's our special representative, are making good progress with that, and I'm very hopeful that we'll make progress at the summit. But in addition, we need to do things in the UK in the short run. For example, that's why we're investing over £5 billion in flood defences to protect communities that will be affected before we can get any wider climate change policies in place.
Congrats on the new job. Thanks for finding the time to come and join us. Appreciate it. Thank you a lot. Thanks a lot. As we were saying there, let's get some more news on those changes the EU may outline later on to checks on goods going into Northern Ireland. Joining us is our Europe correspondent, Michelle Clifford. Hello to you, Michelle. Tell us more about what we might be hearing.
Well, the European Commission will publish proposals later, we understand, to lift a significant number of checks and regulations on goods, on medicine, on agri-foods, also on chilled meats going into Northern Ireland from Great Britain. And the European Commission says its proposals are far-reaching, and it's an attempt for compromise and to break the deadlock between the two sides. Now, the European Commission will clearly be hoping that this will appease the UK side so that they can make progress. Lord Frost yesterday said that they need to consider a new protocol, that the current protocol simply isn't working. Now, even if the proposals today are significant, and there are some reports and suggestions that up to 50% of checks could be lifted, there is that other big issue, the issue of the role of the European Court of Justice as the final arbiter over the protocol. And Lord Frost reiterated again yesterday that that was unacceptable to the United Kingdom. Now, that is what we can call a red line for the EU. We've heard a number of EU leaders saying that they cannot envisage a scenario where the ECJ would not be governing the protocol. So there's going to be real difficulty there. There will be intense negotiations over the coming weeks. Lord Frost also issued a threat yesterday saying that the UK would be willing to trigger Article 16, and that would get rid of some of the terms of the protocol. Now, then you would be into very dangerous territory indeed, because that's when you would be heading for a trade war.
OK, thanks very much, Michelle. Thanks. Of course, we'll hear more on that later in the day here on Sky News. Quick look at some of the papers for you this morning. Should we be looking like this on the front of the Eye? The Felixstowe story that we've been focusing on. The Eye says the shipping company Maersk is diverting its larger vessels away from UK ports because of a backlog of cargo that's waiting to be processed. The FT also pictures the port of Felixstowe, which it says is piling up. Looking at the Metro for you now, with the Cabinet Office Minister Steve Barclay's refusal to apologise for what a parliamentary report has found were serious government failings in the early days of the pandemic. Just putting that to the party chair, who said, Steve said what Steve said, and he then went on to apologise personally. Mirror leading with Boris Johnson on holiday with a picture of the Prime Minister painting. Wonder if it's the boss. And this picture caught my eye in the Mail. Check it out, a reminder of how precarious life is for polar bears and also Arctic wildlife as ice continues to disappear at an alarming rate. I have to say it did also remind me of that Fox's Glacier Mint advert back in the 1980s. But just look how small that area is that polar bear is managing to just catch a little bit of sleep on. COP26 in November, of course, and we will be travelling up to cover that for you live from Glasgow. Having a look at the impact of climate change on the planet, and the top line on our dashboard showing you how the UK's power is produced, that fossil fuel dependency going up and up at the moment, 56%. The number below that is how much warmer the Earth is now than in 1880, when records first began, 1.23 degrees warmer. The one beneath that is the time left, according to some scientists, that we have to try to keep that level below 1.5 degrees Celsius, which some say is the moment of no return, 11 years and a bit. And the scary number at the bottom, that is the millions of tonnes of CO2 emissions. And adapt or die, that's the warning from the Environment Agency this morning. Put that to the Minister, didn't we? Which says we could see more severe flooding and droughts across England if more isn't done to defend against extreme weather brought about by climate change. Their new report predicts that England's winter rainfall will increase 6%, but summer rainfall will be down 15% by the 2050s. The agency also warned that London's sea level is expected to rise by between 9 to 11 inches by the 2050s. That's a lot, isn't it? And by the 2080s, London's sea level is expected to rise about 45 centimetres. I'm trying to do the maths. That's about 18 inches, isn't it? Milena is down on the River Medway in Kent for us this morning. Hello to you, Milena. Tell us more about this report.
Good morning, Kay. Well, climate change may seem like an abstract concept until it impacts your home, your business, your livelihood. And I'm just down the road from a caravan park, which is home to many people and has been flooded numerous times over the past years, and with residents having to evacuate and being left temporarily homeless. And this report warns that we could see more flooding events like that one in the future. It says there'll be more severe flooding, but there could also be droughts. There's going to be severe rising of sea levels, but also pressure on the water supply, all due to climate change. And in what is perhaps the most stark warning, the report says that we could see hundreds of people dying due to severe flooding, similarly to what we saw in Germany this year when about 200 people died in sudden floods that really took the country by surprise. Now, this tone does seem to be deliberately alarming in order to shake up decision makers ahead of the COP26 climate talks in Glasgow to sort of make them take some meaningful decisions. The agency says that traditional flood defences will no longer be enough, and they also stress as one of the main takeaways that just trying to prevent greenhouse gases is no longer enough. You have to adapt to the already inevitable climate changes that have already happened.
Well, thank you. Shadow Business Secretary and Shadow COP26 President Ed Miliband will be with us this morning. That's from 8:05 right here on Sky News. 7:30, yeah. Going to be speaking to the immunologist Professor Dennis Kinane about reports from some that their PCR tests are coming back negative, even though lateral flows are positive. 8:45, speaking to road maintenance directors about potential snow and ice-covered roads this winter due to a shortage of gritter drivers. Yep, it's nearly that time. And 8:45, we're going to be speaking to former Love Island contestant Jessica Hayes about aftercare for mothers who lose a baby. A new study has found that young people, despite being financially savvy, have been hit hardest by the increasing cost of living, something made worse by the pandemic. Enda Brady has been speaking to local people in Northampton and has this report.
Pound a box, spoke to English strawberry. Talk to young people here at Northampton Market and they'll tell you that the only thing that hasn't gone up this year is their wage packet.
My wage has been the same for the last 3 years, but everything's going up. The bills are going up. When I go out, it's going up, and I end up finding myself, I'm not saving no money. I'm stagnant. I'm not going anywhere. So I'm worried about my future.
We've got one of the meters, you know, the one where you put the stick in and stuff. So, yeah, I guess a lot of the time, like, you have to sort of worry when you're going to put your heating on instead of just putting it on when you're cold.
I'm not sure what we'll see this time, but I definitely am a bit worried. I mean, if we can't just feel free to, you know, live a normal life and then you're worried every second about how much you'd have to pay, it's not very nice, is it?
Dinus Vanco recently launched a picture framing business in the town and is watching every penny as he heads towards what he hopes will be a busy build-up to Christmas. But he's worried about rising energy prices.
In these days, you obviously watch every penny where it goes, and obviously it's gonna affect pretty massively me, electric and gas, because yeah, past few years, UK winter was pretty cold.
The report found that young people are significantly more likely to have fallen behind on domestic bills and credit card payments in the last 6 months than any other age group.
It's affecting young people's financial resilience, the ability of young people to withstand financial shocks. 3 in 10 of them in the past 6 months or so have fallen behind on bills, and that's significantly more than older people. So the cost of living crisis is making it harder for young people to keep on top of the bills.
Many young adults faced a difficult financial situation even before the pandemic struck. COVID's impact on the economy has only served to exacerbate it. Enda Brady, Sky News in Northampton.
To last night's England game now, and a clash that has overshadowed the game. This is what it's looking like. Hungary police have arrested a fan at Wembley Stadium for reportedly racially abusing a steward. It happened during England's World Cup qualifier against Hungary last night, which ended in a draw. In the opening minutes, violence also broke out among visiting fans, forcing police officers to retreat down the tunnel. In a statement, the Met Police said shortly after the start of tonight's match at Wembley, officers entered the stand to arrest a spectator for a racially aggravated public order offence following comments made towards a steward. As the officers made the arrests, minor disorder broke out involving other spectators. Order was quickly restored and there have been no further incidents at this stage. 8:30, joined by the legendary England goalkeeper David Seaman, who will be discussing last night's game and the Three Lions bid for a place in the 2022 World Cup. More than 700 residents were ordered to abandon their homes on Tuesday on the Spanish island of La Palma as red-hot lava advanced towards their neighbourhood. Earlier on Tuesday, officials lifted a lockdown ordered because of a cloud of smoke over 2 villages caused by the eruption, allowing more than 3,000 residents to go outside. Lava from the eruption that began on the 19th of September has laid waste to nearly 600 hectares in total, authorities have said. Are these live pictures at the moment, Natasha? No, these are not. But so we can hear. Just have a quick listen. Have a quick listen to this volcano. It's going to make you very nervous if you're living on that island, isn't it? Those poor people, so many properties already having been destroyed. Thankfully, no reports of any deaths or major injuries at this stage. Now, politicians have been talking a lot recently about the UK's shortage of HGV drivers, but it looks as though the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, may be waiting some time before he's asked to help behind the wheel. Take a look at this.
And then when that lines up...
Whoops. Oh. Rightio. Sir Keir was on a visit to Oldham in Greater Manchester yesterday and took a spin in a lorry, but he crashed the vehicle while reversing, knocking over a metal fence, and was told by his instructor that he would have failed the real test. The Road Haulage Association estimates that there are 100,000 lorry driver jobs going right now. Not sure that Sir Keir will be looking for a career change. Want to see it again, Kushti? No? Okay, revert. No, okay. You'd had enough after that. Yeah. Yeah. Good job he stayed with his job at the CPS, wasn't it, for such a long time? Having a quick look at the damage? Oh, yeah, you could teacup that out. Now, scientists are calling for an urgent investigation after reports of people testing negative using gold standard PCR tests. We'll talk about that in just a moment with an immunologist. Hello again, everybody. You are watching The Breakfast Show here on Sky News this Wednesday morning. We've had another one of those government ministers in the studio this morning, this time the party co-chair, Mr. Oliver Dowden, of course, and I put it to him amongst other things. You remember yesterday we had Stephen Barclay in the studio, and he refused to apologise 11 times for that damning report. Do you remember that? Looking into what happened as far as the pandemic was concerned, criticising the government. He would not say he was sorry. So I was keen to know what the party chair thought.
The Prime Minister has said sorry and...
Are you sorry?
Yes, of course I'm sorry, as the Prime Minister is.
And when your colleagues refused to apologise 11 times?
Well, Steve said what Steve said yesterday, and I'm afraid I didn't read the full transcript of everything that was said in that particular interview, but the Prime Minister has been clear on that.
Tamara's here, so they are sorry after all.
They are sorry after all, yes. Obviously an acknowledgement that yesterday's tone from Steve Barclay, who when you said initially, do you want to apologise, he said no, we'll learn the lessons of this report, which he said he hadn't read, was not the right tone. I think it's worth saying that what Oliver Dowden, the party chairman, has done is he's sounded a lot more contrite in saying people want to see government ministers understand the suffering that they've gone through and expect the government to show an appreciation of that, and that's what he's doing. He's apologising for the suffering that people have gone through, which is, if you want to be charitable to Steve Barclay, what the Prime Minister said in May, and perhaps Mr Barclay was not aware of that, he did later in the day concede that that was the case. Oliver Dowden is not apologising for the failure to lock down earlier or for any mistakes made in the government's policy. He said, inevitably, we will have got things wrong. He's not at this stage apologising for those things because the government are looking to the public inquiry next year to rattle through all of that. But certainly, he's found a much better tone than Steve Barclay did yesterday in terms of saying a lot of people have suffered and we appreciate that and we understand the enormity of it.
And what was his tone as far as Northern Ireland was concerned, in your opinion?
So we're expecting on Northern Ireland today the European Commission to respond to the British side saying this Northern Ireland deal, which we all signed up to 2 years ago, is not working, by coming up with new proposals later, which we expect will eliminate a lot of the checks on goods that the UK side say are making life very difficult for GB businesses to export to Northern Ireland. The EU side say that these are very far-reaching, but we already heard Lord Frost yesterday pretty much panning them before they'd even come out the door, saying, actually, we're not just concerned about that, we're concerned about the European Court of Justice, which the European Union says is a red line. Interestingly, Oliver Dowden did not say that was a deal breaker. It sounded like perhaps that was the negotiating starting point, but obviously there's a lot of bad faith here.
OK, tomorrow's take at 9 o'clock this morning. Looking forward to it already. Thanks very much, Tamara. Thank you. Moving on, scientists are calling for an urgent investigation after reports of people testing negative using gold standard PCR tests, despite testing positive on rapid lateral flow tests. So what's going on? Professor Dennis Kinane, immunologist and founding scientist at Signpost Diagnostics, joining us now. Hello to you. Thanks for joining us on the programme this morning. What's happening?
Thank you. Good morning. Yes, we've done approximately 2 million PCR tests, and we've probably done about 200,000 lateral flow. So we can speak from experience. We do not have this problem at all. I mean, we see the PCR as the gold standard, as the go-to when you want to confirm tests. It's very simple to actually make a lateral flow positive. The school children have worked that out, and essentially you can do that via soft drinks, etc., and you can actually change the antibody configuration to some extent such that your lateral flow will come up positive. That's been known for a while.
OK, so what you're saying is they're being rigged?
No, I'm not. I'm actually saying that there are, well, I mean, they could be in some situations, that's true. But what typically happens is that in any test that we have a propensity for false positives, false negatives. In PCR, particularly as Signpost, we do the PCRs twice to confirm positives. We don't just give a positive out. And invariably, our first result agrees with our second result, and very few false positives indeed. So what I'm saying is that in any situation, and with lateral flow, for example, it's a kind of hair trigger. It's actually something that is actually easily, let's say, changeable, and given that, then you can get false positives, as and most likely in lateral flow. Actually, you're most likely to get false negatives. Lateral flow only picks up very high amounts of viral load, and is notorious for actually being insensitive and giving you false negatives rather than false positives.
Yeah, but my understanding is, and only because when I had COVID, I was told by the doctor that if your lateral flow test is positive, because it has to have so much, you have to have so much. What's the phrase? So much COVID in your body, I suppose, in order to make it positive. That the likelihood is that you do have COVID-19.
Absolutely, and you will really see that on the PCR test as well. You'll see the PCR test is not either positive or negative. A PCR test will give you a full range of an indication of the viral load. So if you have a positive lateral flow, invariably you'll see a very high peak on your PCR, and this will be confirmed. We'd never expect to see lateral flows picking up positives, and I think there's something either going wrong with the PCR in question or going wrong with the lateral flow here. But in our experiences, and I'm saying we're speaking from experience at Signpost, we've done about 2 million PCRs, and in addition, hundreds of thousands of lateral flows. We know exactly what to expect and what we can, and definitely the PCR is gold standard, no doubt about it.
OK, so the tests are more than likely wrong, then, is what you're saying. But I suppose the big question that a lot of people will have is, should they still self-isolate? Because the test will have registered what it did, but they could potentially still have it. I suppose you're saying not, but they're going off their test results. Do they self-isolate?
I think you trust the PCR. I think what you, with respect to if you're feeling, I mean, this winter we see an awful lot of people with flu coming through, and these people have many of the symptoms of COVID, as you would imagine. But these people, once they're tested with PCR and verified as being negative, then they can, once they're feeling better, they can actually return to work. And presume that they had the flu. We also have tests whereby we can actually test for flu. So we can do influenza A and influenza B and other flu viruses. And that's really definitive. But at the moment, if you're positive with the lateral flow and you go off and get tested with a PCR, then I think you've got to believe the PCR result and go back to work and relax about it.
OK, great advice. Thanks for joining us on the programme this morning. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think half-term's just around the corner, isn't it? My little boy is much too big for those sort of things now. But I know a lot of you this morning will be thinking, what should we do with the kids for half-term, given that so many countries have come off the red list? What about going to Goa? OK, well, let's take you there. For now, we took you to South Africa earlier in the week, didn't we? Nikhil Desai is Managing Director of Goa Tourism Development Corporation. Hello to you. Thanks for joining us on the programme this morning. Why should people go to Goa?
Hello, good morning. Thank you for having me on your show. And I'm very happy to inform you that Goa is fully open for all our vaccinated travelers. Starting 15th of October, the Indian government will start issuing visas for all tourists who travel by charter flights. And from 15th of November onwards, we will have visas issued for all those tourists who arrive by commercial flights. As I say this, Goa is fully geared up for welcoming tourists from all parts of the world, especially those from the United Kingdom. And we are hoping for a very productive tourism season ahead. In Goa, we have had almost 100% double vaccination for all our citizens. And the target is to complete everybody getting double vaccinated by end of this month. In addition, I'm also very happy to inform you that in India, we will be administering over 1 billion doses by end of this week. 70% of Indians have been vaccinated with at least one dose. So despite the rough time that we went through in April and May, I'm very happy to tell you that we have literally turned the corner, and India is slowly but surely coming back to normal with COVID cases at all-time low. I think this is one of the best time for vaccinated travelers to come to India, especially Goa. Most of the activities are fully open, and all the COVID protocol norms are being followed. And I would definitely, it won't be an exaggeration if I say that Goa happens to be one of the safest places on this earth to travel post-COVID.
OK, sounds fantastic. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us this morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So you can go to Cape Town, you can go to Goa. Who knows? Who knows where else we might go this week? Stay tuned and find out. Now, William Shatner, he's going to space, boldly travelling where no 90-year-old has gone before by becoming the oldest person to venture into space. The Star Trek actor will be on board Jeff Bezos' second Blue Origin flight with 3 others, which will launch from a Texas spaceport, as our US correspondent Greg Milam reports.
Okay. It's more than 50 years since he boldly went where no one had gone before. That, of course, was TV fiction. Now, for real, William Shatner will go where certainly no 90-year-old has ever been.
And you're going to hear the engine cut off.
Dressed in the spacesuit of Blue Origin, the actor's completed the final preparations for a journey that will treat him to a few minutes of weightlessness at the edge of space and the realization of a life's dream.
I'm thrilled and anxious and a little nervous and a little frightened about this whole new adventure. But I've got to think that once it's done, once I've been into space and seen the universe and seeing our Earth and the contrast between that hostility and this warmth and how important it is to keep the Earth alive so that we don't wreck it.
This time, the man who, as Captain Kirk, commanded the Starship Enterprise on our TV and movie screens won't have to control anything when the new Shepard rocket blasts off from the Texas desert with him and 3 others aboard It will be entirely remote controlled. They'll travel up 66 miles before gently parachuting back down to Earth. The whole thing will last 10 minutes.
That's incredible.
It's been made possible by Blue Origin and Amazon founder Jeff Bezos. A huge Star Trek fan, he was the first to enjoy the experience his billions paid for back in July and invited Shatner to share it for free.
In our mission.
He will be the oldest person ever in space. Blue Origin says he's met all of the health and physical requirements to make a trip, to reach, as Captain Kirk used to say, that final frontier. Greg Milam, Sky News, Texas.
Don't have problems with icy roads, do they, in space? A warning that our roads could be left covered in dangerous snow and slippery ice this winter due to a shortage of gritter drivers. Speaking to a road maintenance director, very shortly.
Breached the road. There is a lot of gas being fired all around us. शांति से इनको समझाओ वरना ये हम लोग It is an absolute carnival kind of atmosphere out here for Prime Minister Modi's decisive victory. These students are defying the prohibitory orders and now they're going to be arrested. We aim to be the best and most trusted place for news. The roads have been inundated. The only way out is to get people by boat. What is feared that over 200 people might have died because of these landslides. This on any given day would have been bustling with people, but today it's absolutely deserted. This is one of the most sensitive areas of northeast Delhi where there's been clashes. I'm Neville Lazarus and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi.
We don't understand that every lake or a pond is a habitat in itself, which houses frogs, snakes, crabs, turtles, birds, so many different life forms. Human beings directly depend on underground water source. So a lake or a pond is necessary to replenish these groundwater resources.
Did you know that if we all work together, we can really make a difference to the air pollution around our schools?
Yeah, we should really do that.
There'll be a chilly start for some on Wednesday, with a grass frost possible in parts of eastern England. Early low cloud and fog will slowly lift to leave sunny spells for many. Thicker cloud over parts of southern and western Britain will be stubborn to clear, giving some patchy light rain in places. That rain will become increasingly confined to the northwest during the afternoon. We've got clean Atlantic air moving in on the westerly flow, so the air pollution index, where 1 means low pollution and 10 means very high, will stay low everywhere.
The Air Quality Report, sponsored by Philips Air Purifiers.
Concerns that motorists could be stuck on icy roads this winter because of a shortage of gritter lorries. Let's talk about it in more detail with Ian Morehouse, Winter Maintenance Director for Ground Control. Hello to you, Ian. Thanks for joining us. How worried are you?
Good morning, Kay.
How worried are you?
Good morning, Kay. How are you today?
I'm good, thank you. I just wondered how worried you are about not having enough gritter lorries.
Kay, we... Of course, no. We're constantly practicing and preparing for winter. That for us starts back in April, and we do a lot of work to ensure that our clients, who are people from emergency services through retail and utilities providers, for example, are going to get the service that they need to keep their sites safe and open. So we began recruiting lorry drivers for vehicles like the one behind me in August to ensure that we had enough preparation for this winter.
Okay. How many drivers are you short, or are you pretty confident? And also, do you have a problem getting the salt?
Yeah, really great questions. At the moment, I've actually got a team of people starting today for inductions. I've got about half a dozen be here today. We still got a few openings and leads, but that's all about our resilience. So everybody doesn't have to work every evening. So we've got plenty of people today to staff all our routes. And what we're doing now is adding resilience to our network, and we'll continue to do that throughout the whole winter. In terms of salt, I've got about 30 tons behind me. I've got about another 80 tons coming here today. But throughout our entire national network, we've got about 50,000 tons of salt, which is more than 25 days of salt usage for our customers. So like the councils, we're all preparing throughout the season and making sure that we've got plenty of salt and drivers and vehicles to deliver service.
Okay, what's the forecast? Have you got one yet?
I was speaking to some of my colleagues about that yesterday. It looks like October is going to be probably mild, or a chance of a little bit more mild than normal, though I did hear some frost in the forecast that you just stated there. November, again, probably very similar to average. Longer distance, we've been told it might be a very similar winter to last winter. So some of that high pressure, the northerlies, bringing some big cold blasts. So like everybody, our advice is to prepare, be ready for those conditions. And as individuals, when you're out and about, if it's driving, if you're at a car park or on the roads, to be cautious, take your own care and attention.
Okay, Ian, great to talk to you. Good luck, and thanks very much indeed for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you, Kay. Pleasure to be here today.
Thank you. I'm sure that he won't necessarily want to be employing Sir Keir Starmer to drive one of his big lorries for him. This is what he did yesterday when he was in Oldham. Took a spin in a lorry, and then decided to reverse it. Here we go. Have a look. There we go. Oh, okay. It's over here. I thought we were going to do a full frame. Here we are. We missed it. Anyway, he reversed into a big sign. So he's definitely not going to get a job reversing a lorry. I think he's going to be happier anyway, being the leader of the opposition. More on that coming up in the next hour here on Sky News. All today's top stories, top of the hour. See you then.